Hello everyone. Hope you're all having a good day so far. It's not even Thanksgiving yet, and I hear Christmas music on my local radio stations and see red and green holiday lights in the early night skies. No big blow-up lawn Santas and sleds yet though. I know they're coming soon. Today is Wednesday, November 18th, 2020. My name is Sonal Patel, and this is the Paint the Medical Picture podcast series. Did you know the AMA has released new CPT codes for the future and fingers crossed COVID-19 vaccines? Well, I dive into it in this episode. This episode highlights the November 2020 coding guidance set forth by the AMA and my coordinating trusty tips on how to use these vaccine codes correctly. And I also share some wise words from C.S. Lewis. If you've checked me out on LinkedIn, you know I'm all about compliance and protecting our physicians and valued healthcare professionals when it comes to the business of medicine. I hope this week with me brings you enough to take back to your organizations, to want to dive in deeper, to use my tips and best practices to ensure success. I hope this podcast will help you boost the quality of documentation capture and improve coding accuracy as you help your providers paint the medical picture. If you like what you're hearing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss an episode. Please write in a review and rating on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to my podcast. I'd really love your support. Now, a quick disclaimer. Before I get started on the episode, this podcast episode and Nexsen Pruet podcast series do not constitute legal advice, but I am fortunate to work with sound healthcare attorneys at Nexsen Pruet. And as their consultant, I have over 10 years of experience in front office, back end, coding, and billing for multi-specialty physicians, compliance, and auditing for both E&M and surgical operative reports. Again, the opinions and insights throughout are mine alone, and they in no means constitute legal advice. So, let's get into Newsworthy. Operation Warp Speed, OWS, is a combined initiative of the Department of Health and Human Services, the HHS, and the Department of Defense, the DoD, as well as the private sector, which aims to boost the research and development, the manufacturing, and the distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, therapeutics, and testings. OWS has invested billions of dollars into numerous pharmaceutical companies like Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, Moderna, Pfizer, Sanofi GlaxoSmithKline, and Novavax. Of course, OWS has lofty goals that include the delivery of millions of doses of a new SARS-CoV-2 vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine, which has to have passed all safety and efficacy measures and be approved or authorized by the FDA for use in the U.S. population. Further, OWS wants this by the end of 2020, as well as they want us to have as many as 300 million doses of such vaccines available as early as January 2021 and be deployed by mid-2021. Now, as of the day of the development and recording of this episode, Pfizer and BioNTech have announced that they have a COVID-19 vaccine candidate in BNT162b2 that may be authorized for emergency use by the end of November. That's just 2 weeks away. In a press release issued on November 9th, 2020, they stated their development is 90% effective in preventing the coronavirus disease in participants without prior infection. Their press release also states that they need more data on safety in order to apply for the FDA's emergency use authorization. They further disclose that up to 50 million doses could be available globally by the end of the year, with that number climbing to over 1 billion in 2021. Now, also newsworthy, I wanted to go over the new CPT codes that have been created. There are new codes for immunizations. CPT codes have been created for reporting of immunizations for the COVID-19 pandemic. These CPT codes are unique for each of the 2 coronavirus vaccines, as well as their coordinating administration codes that are unique to each such vaccine. The new CPT codes clinically distinguish each coronavirus vaccine for better tracking, reporting, and analysis that supports data-driven planning and allocation. And also good to mention again, among these new codes is one that describes the additional supplies and clinical staff time required to mitigate transmission of respiratory infectious disease while providing evaluation, treatment, or procedural services during a public health emergency. Now, let me be clear and dispel continued confusion. CPT code 99072 was issued back on September 8th of 2020. And although it is a valid CPT code, a new and valid CPT code, it has absolutely no relative value units, or RVUs. So CMS therefore considers it to be bundled into whatever other service is performed that day, that encounter. CMS issued this guidance on October 27th, 2020, and has given CPT code 99072 a procedure status of B. Status B also means you cannot bill the Medicare patient for CPT code 99072. And status B also therefore means you cannot give the patient an advanced beneficiary notice, an ABN. Now, I am hearing that your Aetnas and your Cignas may be paying around $20 to $25 for CPT code 99072 right now. But again, keep abreast of all payer policies and be very mindful that this may be audited post-pandemic. Now, further, as the flu season approaches and the COVID-19 pandemic persists, the necessity for a single test that measures the antigens for our severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus, as well as influenza virus types A and types B, has become apparent. So, during the November CPT editorial panel meeting, the panel went ahead and approved for an additional code under the microbiology subsection of the pathology and laboratory section of the CPT code set. To address the ongoing clinical need to report COVID-19 testing, the panel expedited the publication of this additional code to the AMA website on November 10th of 2020. This new CPT code is CPT code 87428, and it is effective immediately for use in reporting this laboratory test. I will dive into it more in details next. And now, it's time for my best practice tips in Trusty Tip. So, alongside this week's Newsworthy, we need to remember to adhere to CPT coding guidelines, definitions, and maintain compliance for the use of these brand new codes, when we can use them, how we can use them. Currently, there are 2 existing CPT codes to report antigen testing using immunoassay technique for influenza type A or B in CPT code 87400 and for SARS-CoV-2 in CPT code 87426. However, there is no code that describes multiplex immunoassay antigen testing for these 3 viral agents, so your SARS-CoV-2 and your influenza virus types A and B, until now. New CPT code 87428 is defined as severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus and influenza virus types A and B. So, this new code to report a multiplex viral pathogen panel using an antigen immunoassay technique would facilitate reporting SARS-CoV-2 testing along with influenza types A and B in the differential diagnosis. Some more background reminders on earlier new codes issued on October 7th, 2020, and are available for immediate use. They are for our analogous codes that have been adopted for multiplex viral pathogen panels using molecular methods for detecting nucleic acids in our CPT code 87636 and in our CPT code 87637. Now, because of the early deployment and utilization of these tests, our clinical indications are subject to further refinement as knowledge of the novel coronavirus evolves. The CPT editorial panel will continue to review and may clarify these indications as more information becomes available. Now, CPT Assistant Special Edition for November 2020 provides us with a clinical example for the brand new and effective now CPT code 87428. The example is about a 50-year-old female who presents with fever, cough, and shortness of breath. A nasopharyngeal swab is collected for SARS-CoV-2, influenza A, and influenza B antigen testing. A description of the procedure for 87428 includes: you place the swab and swirl it in a supplied reagent tube to disrupt and release viral nucleoprotein antigens. Transfer an aliquot of that sample to the test cassette sample well and place it in the analyzer. Report the qualitative tests to the ordering healthcare professional. The CPT editorial panel also approved an additional 6 new Category 1 codes, new and revised guidelines and parenthetical notes, and a new Appendix Q. These CPT codes were developed and based on extensive collaboration with CMS and the CDC and are unique for each of 2 coronavirus vaccines, as well as coordinating administration codes unique to each such vaccine and dose. The new CPT codes clinically distinguish each COVID-19 vaccine for better tracking, reporting, and analysis that supports data-driven planning and allocation. These 6 new codes are CPT codes 0001A, 0002A, 0011A, 0012A, 91300, and 91301. Appendix Q is titled Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus 2 Vaccines. It further describes the 2 new vaccines in CPT codes 91300 and 91301. 91300 is defined as Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus 2 Vaccine mRNA LNP spike protein preservative-free 0.3 milliliter dosage diluent reconstituted for intramuscular use. The vaccine administration codes that accompany it are CPT code 0001A for the first dose, 0002A for the second dose. The vaccine manufacturer is Pfizer. The National Drug Code or NDC numbers are 59267-1000-1 and 59267-1000-01. The dosing interval is for 21 days. New CPT code 91301 is defined as Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus 2 Vaccine messenger RNA LNP spike protein preservative-free 0.5 milliliter dosage for intramuscular use. The vaccine administration codes that accompany it are CPT code 0011A for the first dose, 0012A for the second dose. The vaccine manufacturer is Moderna. The NDC numbers are 80777-273-10 and 80777-0273-10. The dosing interval is for 28 days. These codes will also be located in the medicine section of the CPT codebook in the 2022 publication. Additional introductory and instructional information for codes 0001A and 0002A, 0011A, 0012A, and 91300 and 91301 can also be found in the Immunization Administration for Vaccines, Toxoids, and Vaccines Toxoids Guidelines in the medicine section of the CPT code set. Remember, all 6 of these new codes will be effective upon receipt of FDA approval or receipt of EUA for these vaccines. Now, by keeping up to date on all the new coding changes during this pandemic and understanding how to effectively document a clear, vibrant medical picture, a certified medical coder can abstract codes with accuracy. And finally, this week's inspiring quote in Spark is from the British author C.S. Lewis. There are far better things ahead than any we leave behind. Say it again, only louder this time, right? I know we all collectively believe this, most especially now, during this time of coronavirus. We want it left behind. I think we continue to shift and seek change in this space of healthcare. We are all hopeful that our life and times will get better. We are all hopeful these vaccines from Pfizer and Moderna will pass FDA scrutiny. I know we are all hopeful for the better here in healthcare. I am happy C.S. Lewis's spark still shines on in all of us today. So that wraps up today's episode. I'd love to hear your questions and comments. You can always direct message me on LinkedIn or voice message me on the Anchor app. And if you would like to inquire about my consultant services, you can always reach me through my email address at nexsenpruet.com. I'll leave links to everything in the show notes below. Please continue staying safe and healthy, practice safety for one and all during our collective life in the time of coronavirus. Thank you for listening in on today's episode, and I hope every week with me brings you closer to helping your providers paint a masterpiece. See you next Wednesday. If you want more information from me, go ahead and follow me on LinkedIn or send me an email at sonalpatel@nexsenpruet.com for all my consulting services in medical coding, auditing, and compliance. Thank you.